Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about our feet. I want to bring this issue up because I think that a lot of people suffer from foot issues and they don't seem to think that they have any control over the situation. So if you're wearing orthotics or you've had plantar fasciitis or you currently have it, there are things that we can be doing to strengthen our feet, to gain mobility in our feet that will help out with all of these things. Even if you have things further upstream like hip, knee, even low back issues, a lot of that stems or originates at our feet if they don't have the ability to do the jobs that they're supposed to do. So we're going to dive into a little bit of stretching, a little bit of coordination work, which might blow your mind, and a little bit of mobility as well as some strengthening stuff. So let's get started. All right, so as far as stretching goes, we're gonna be looking mostly at toe extension or dorsiflexion, the ability to lift our toes, which I'll show you in just a second. We're gonna pay attention to all the toes, but we're gonna put a little bit of emphasis on the great toe, the big toe, because it plays such a big role in toe extension. It affects our abilities to jump, to run, to walk, to pivot. It plays a very large role, and because our feet have been strapped in shoes for the majority of our lives, the muscles that are responsible for that action have atrophied because they haven't been used, and we've lost that neural connection because, again, it hasn't been used. So we need to rebuild that back up, and so we're going to give you guys a couple of different ways to do that. All right, so toe extension or dorsiflexion looks like this. So our ability to lift our toes up. And when you do this, you want to make sure that the knuckle of your big toe stays down on the ground versus lifting the whole foot off the ground. So for toe extension, for a stretch, a passive stretch, we can simply use a wall, a box, anything like that. And we just scoot our foot up close to whatever that surface is going to be. Again, making sure that we keep the knuckle of the big toe down on the ground and then scooting it in as close to the wall or box as possible. From there, we can just hang out here into a passive stretch. I would suggest hanging out for 1 to 2 minutes, just totally trying to relax. After 1 to 2 minutes, we're gonna do a Pales contraction. Now that's an acronym, you don't have to worry about what it means, but basically we're going to be pushing our toes into the box. So squeezing my toes into the box. Now as I'm doing this, again, making sure that the knuckle of the great toe stays down, and I'm just squeezing my toes into the box. And you just want to do it with, 20 to 30% effort. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. And you're going to hold that contraction for about 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, we're going to reverse directions as if we're trying to lift our toes off the box. So if you are at your end range on your passive stretch, you won't actually get your toes off the box, but you're gonna continue to hold that contraction of trying to pull the toes off the box. And you're gonna hold that for 30 seconds as well. When you're doing this, you might get some crazy cramping motion, something in here. That's just neurological confusion of your body and your nervous system trying to figure out what it is that it's trying to do. And that typically happens when we're close to end ranges on muscles. So after 30 seconds of trying to lift the toes off the box, which is called a rails contraction, we're just going to totally relax any sort of contraction, and we're going to be back into our passive stretch where we originally started. I would hang out there for another minute. So quick recap. Come in for the passive stretch, hang out for 1 to 2 minutes. Do a Pales contraction where you're squeezing your toes into the box for 20 to 30 seconds. Do a rails contraction where you're trying to lift your toes off the box for 20 to 30 seconds. Relax everything and hang out for another 1 to 2 minutes. All right, so let's say that your toe dorsiflexion is very small, like maybe it's only something like this. Then you probably don't need a box or a wall, but you need some sort of little object that you can prop up against. So you can use plates, books, notepads, something like that. Figure out what you can lift your toes to under your own accord, and then fill that gap in with something. So I'm gonna use 2 little 2.5 pound plates. So again, we would hang out in our passive stretch. So you do want to feel a stretch with whatever it is you are putting under your toe. And then we would do our pales contraction where we would be pushing into the plate, and then we would do our rails contraction where we pull off the plate. Let's say that you make some gains. So when you do your rails contraction, your toe actually does come off the plate. That's great. You're gonna finish out that hold, but then instead of just going back down to that surface, because you have gained a little bit of range, you're gonna wanna slide something else in there to fill in the gap so that when you relax, you're in a new, deeper passive stretch. So why do we need toe dorsiflexion to begin with? Well, let's look at just walking. When you walk, you take a step, your heel strikes first, you roll onto the ball of your foot. As your other foot comes across, your weight starts shifting forward, and there's a push-off moment. Well, if you're lacking toe extension, like if you can't get to here, then something else has to give. Something has to compensate. So that compensation can look like a lot of different things. It could just be shortening your step completely. Maybe you can only take small steps because when you get here, it's time to lift off, right? Or another common one would be the person has to rotate that foot out to avoid the toe extension. And so now you've got a little bit of external rotation happening with each and every step. You know, think about all the steps you take in a day. That's gonna make a big difference over time. And that's just walking, you know, you throw in there jogging, running, things like that. So sprinting, jumping is gonna be another one. It's gonna be really hard to jump if you don't have any toe extension. And what can also happen is because you don't have that extension, if you think about the foot, if you just think about all of the muscle tissue and the fascial tissue on the bottom side of the foot, well, if you don't have toe extension, then that means every time you do try to do something that requires toe extension, you're pulling all that tissue really tight because it doesn't have that ability to go there. Well, you keep doing that over and over and over and over, and all of a sudden you're gonna have inflamed tissue on the bottom of your foot, also known as plantar fasciitis. So a lot of big and common issues happen simply because of lack of toe mobility. So starting there, if you notice that you don't have it, can solve a lot of things for you. And those are all just really simple things because I don't want this to be a super long video, but you know, it goes up the chain, right? If you're missing that extension, then other things further up are gonna have to compensate for it. So like it could be the ankle, it could be the knee, it could go even higher up to the hip, but something is gonna have to compensate for that. I mean, hell, you might be having low back pain that starts way down at the foot and you had no idea. If you know that you don't have toe extension, you're certainly not gonna hurt anything by getting some back. All right, so as far as coordination goes, so just like all the mobility work that I do with our members here or with my private clients, we need to be able to control any new ranges that we do develop. So that's where the coordination work comes into play. And this is the one that probably gets you pretty frustrated, especially with your toes, because you might not have as much control over them as you expect you would have. So we'll just start out really easy. We'll just start out by lifting all 5 toes off the ground. And I would hold for 3 to 5 seconds so you actually know it's not a fluke, you do have control of that. And then we'll set them back down. I would do that about 3 to 5 times. Okay, and then after that, let's say, all right, I just want to lift the big toe. So I'm going to keep these 4 down on the floor, and I'm going to try to just lift the big toe. And again, holding for 3 to 5 seconds so that I know it's not a fluke, I do have control. And what you'll notice here is when I lift my big toe, you can see these other toes kind of pushing down into the floor. So what I like to do, so you can build further control and coordination, is I'll lift my big toe, and then I'm going to go back in on those other 4, and I'm doing everything I can to try to relax them as much as possible. So now I know I'm just controlling the big toe, nothing else. This is just kind of dialing it in. All right, let's say you can get the big toe up. That's great. Now let's do the opposite. Let's keep the big toe down and try to lift the other 4. Not bad. You can't see it on the video very well, but even on this, I can tell that I'm really pushing my big toe into the floor as I lift the other 4. So During my hold, I'm going to do everything I can to try to relax this toe. So I'm developing more control, more precise control over these 4 toes. All right, good. So now let's just lift all 5 and just put the big toe down. A little bit harder. You can also see the pinky toe doing some crazy stuff out here. So we'll try that a couple times. A little better on the pinky toe, that one. All right, lift all 5 up. Now let's put the 4 down, keeping the big toe up. Good. Now, for the grand finale, we're going to lift all 5, and we're going to try to spread them out. And I'm going to try to cascade so that one toe touches the floor at a time. So again, all 5. I'm going to try to get the pinky toe to go down first, and then the next toe, and then the next, and then the next, and then the next. You can also see how they're kind of curled up here, so I'm going to try to fix that on this next rep. Try to get them where they're relaxed and flat when they're down on the ground, which is not able to do just yet. So cascading. Good. All right, so I would do that on both feet and just work through those different exercises. It doesn't, there's no sets or reps necessary here, but this should just be done regularly. All right, so for strengthening them, we have a couple different things that I like to do. So number 1, working on stability in the arch of the foot. So it doesn't matter how pronounced of an arch you have in your feet. We just want to be able to maintain what we do have, right? So you're going to take our foot and we're gonna try to scrunch it together. So you're gonna see like the arch kind of pull up. And I'm gonna hold that, and then I'm gonna take my other foot off the ground so that now, in addition to holding that arch, I'm also having to balance, which is gonna require a lot from my foot muscles. It looks something like this. So this would just be me standing normal, pretty passively on my foot. I'm gonna scrunch, I'm really like digging. I'm trying to shorten this distance. I'm digging the knuckle of my big toe into the floor, and you can kind of see what that does to my other toes as well. And I'm going to try to hold this arch as best as I can, and then I'm going to take my other foot off the ground. You're immediately going to start wobbling around. And then once you get it where you can hold it pretty well with your foot in one position, try moving around your free foot. Maybe I come straight out to the side. Own that position. Maybe I come back behind me. Own that position. Whoop. I can also come across my body. Own that position. The whole time, I'm trying to keep this arch as engaged as possible rather than just standing flat foot, or even worse would be letting that whole ankle roll in, right? That's what we don't want to happen, because that is basically lack of strength, lack of stability, and that's the thing that we see a lot when people squat, especially if you can get them to squat barefoot. So if that's happening in your squat, you can imagine that's probably happening in your walking, that's probably happening every time you take a step and you're jogging or you're running or anything like that. And over time, these muscles just get weaker, 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 and this whole system just keeps collapsing in on itself. And that's gonna start to have an effect on the ankle and then the knee and then even higher up in the hip, because things have to compensate for that. All right, so last thing for kind of toe and foot strengthening is just doing some pulls with something slick on the floor. Like right now I have a t-shirt. This could be like a piece of plastic, something like that. And the slicker the surface you have it sitting on, the better it's gonna slide. So what we do is we just get the ball of your foot on the object, so on the t-shirt in this case, and we scrunch the toes together, and we're using our foot to pull the shirt towards us. Okay? And you can get even more specific with alternating between pulling with the big toe first and pulling with the 4 little ones first. So like big toe first would be here. I'm scrunching it together. Sooner or later, the other 4 will come along for the ride, and that's fine, right? But I start with a big toe, and then when I have to, I let the other toes come in. We could also do that with the 4 little guys. So initiate with the 4, big toe comes along so that I can pull it even further. Right? Or big toe first. Or just all of them. So those are 2 strengthening exercises I like to do that are pretty easy and very low level exercises. So there you have it. You've got some toe stretching now, you've got some toe coordination exercises and control, and you've got some toe and foot strengthening exercises. I would recommend doing these daily if you're lacking severely, maybe every other day if you're pretty good. And if you're a runner, you definitely should be doing this. If you're a CrossFitter, there's enough running in our workouts, there's enough squatting, there's enough one-legged squatting, there's jump rope. There's so much stuff that happens on our feet that if your feet aren't operating at their capacity, you're missing out. And you're probably creating some issues further upstream that you haven't realized is actually related to your foot. If you're wearing orthotics and you want to get rid of them, start doing this stuff. If you're wearing orthotics but you're cool with them, you should still be doing this stuff because it's a part of your body, and the idea is to have ownership over our own body. So if you wear orthotics, essentially you're putting a pad under your foot, a fairly rigid pad that forms the shape that your arch should be able to hold, but because those foot muscles have atrophied over time, they aren't holding it, and now that just in walking and running and doing whatever it is that you do on your feet, that arch is just completely collapsing over and over and over. The orthotic is there to kind of hold your foot in place. But if your foot was strong, if the muscles were stronger so that they could hold themselves, you wouldn't need the orthotic. And you might say, well, what's the problem with having an orthotic? Well, nothing until you don't have it. You might not always be somewhere where you do have it, or I don't know. I just also personally don't like, to think that I have to have some piece of external equipment so that my body can function normally. But, even if you're okay with that, still, you may not have access to your orthotic everywhere that you are. Or wouldn't it be nice to be able to walk around barefoot every now and then, let your feet have some freedom? So give them a go. Just fit them into your day. The nice thing about it is anywhere you get where you can take off your shoes, take them off and start going through some of those toe drills. Even if it's nothing but the coordination exercises, the toe lifts, you can do those with flip-flops on. Find ways to mix them into your day. The more the better. And the more you can get your feet out of the shoes, the better off you're going to be. These things were meant for us to walk on them. We made it a long way before shoes came along. Especially today's shoes that just have ungodly amounts of cushion and support, and it's just ridiculous. So give your feet some attention, give them some love, and they will return the favor to you. All right, until next time.